The Creator is a sci-fi film that has been on a lot of people's most anticipated lists for quite a while, including mine, and I can't wait to talk about it. Amidst a future war between the human race and the forces of artificial intelligence, Joshua, a hardened ex-special forces agent grieving the disappearance of his wife, is recruited to hunt down and kill the Creator, the elusive architect of advanced AI, who has developed a mysterious weapon with the power to end the war and mankind itself. Joshua and his team of elite operatives journey across enemy lines into the dark heart of AI-occupied territory, only to discover the world-ending weapon he's been instructed to destroy is an AI in the form of a young child. So this is from director Gareth Edwards, and he's brought us some phenomenal sci-fi movies like Rogue One, 2014's Godzilla, and Monsters. He is an expert at building these futuristic worlds that have a very tangible realness to them, making them seem less like sci-fi and more like what's to come. And here we have John David Washington as Joshua, Madeline Voyles as Alfie, and also Gemma Chan, Ken Watanabe, Allison Janney, and Ralph Inneson. Now first, I want to talk about the jaw-dropping visuals. We've seen several massive budget films, even some this year, like The Flash. Their special effects, they're not even in the same universe when it comes to quality. The world is intensely immersive and everything feels real. And I know that there is a crap ton of CGI within this movie, but here's the thing, none of it looks computer generated. Landscapes, villages, ships, and aircraft, they all appear as if they belong. Not once did the effect break me out of my enthrallment because they were lackluster. And then we have the variety of AI that's represented. There are some that are fully robot, but they have these fluid movements of humans. There's no jerky walking or stilted gestures. If these would have skin on and then have faces, you'd never be able to tell the difference based on their movements. And I love their design too. They're complex, but also simple, so there's no figuring out how they work when our eyes first encounter them. Then we have replicants that are kind of half robot, half human. They have hair, eyes, mouths, they even age. But at the base of their head, we can clearly see the mechanisms working, showing how mechanical their thinking actually is. But what really sells these characters are the expressions that they convey. Looking at them straight on, they look completely human, except for missing ears. But hey, you put on a hat or have longer hair, that shortcoming goes away. Now, something else I found creative is the weaponry that we see and the vehicles that are used. While there are elements that are very futuristic and way beyond what's available today, some guns and cars and trucks would look right at home today or even 20 years ago. They've just been augmented with tech. That's also something about this story that I appreciate. This is Earth, and we're dealing with real locations, and not in the too distant future. But this is sort of an alternate near future. At the very beginning of the movie, we're shown some newsreels that help to establish how things got to where they are, and why there's a war going on between the Western humans and pretty much the rest of the world over AI. We get to see how robots and then artificial intelligence are introduced, much like it is now, but for the movie, it was introduced earlier in time to allow for larger advancements that lead to the movie's present of 2065. Now for the story, this has a lot of familiar beats to it, and the progression of the narrative, it is pretty predictable. I don't think there are many surprises or shocks, even when the story unveils moments that feel like they should be met with gasps of disbelief. Character trajectories are also pretty obvious, so if you are hoping for a very unanticipated arc, this doesn't have it. But that's not to say that the story isn't engaging. I was absolutely enthralled in what was happening, even though I knew what was coming. And the world that was built, along with the visuals, it crafted a backdrop that I became lost in. I cared about the characters. I was tense with anticipation, even though I knew what the outcome would be. Now, something I didn't necessarily expect or see coming within the story is the theme. This has a massive focus on humanity and really what it means to be human. Now, don't worry, this isn't preachy at all. The theme is actually rather subtle. On one side, we have the Westerners, and mainly Americans, who are threatened by artificial intelligence and they seek to wipe the robots from the planet. And if civilians get in the way, those are sympathizers, and there's always going to be some collateral damage, right? But on the other side, the area now known as New Asia has humans, robots, and replicants all living together, working side by side, and thriving in communities and cities as equals. What we're shown is that the AI actually becomes more human, or at least compassionate, than most of the actual humans. The people, they're governed by their greed, fears, and biases, which lead to destruction and unnecessary suffering. Now for me, this movie is almost perfect, but there was one glaring issue I had towards the very end. As a story device, there's this massive weapon that the US military has created called Nomad. It flies at a very high altitude and it continuously scans the ground below for AI bases and outposts inside New Asia. Now, this thing is really just a flying WMD, and it is capable of epic devastation. Well, as the movie is reaching its climax, we're watching the Nomads scanning various parts of the world, all with vastly different landscapes. But to the best of my knowledge, there's only one Nomad. So while having the scanning occurring over different cities and locales, it does make for some suspenseful storytelling. It's highly improbable, and in this instance, it broke me out of the story. But up until that point, there is nail-biting energy and urgency that's then hyped up even more by a wonderful musical score from Hans Zimmer. The music, it's enveloping and emotional, passionately just driving up our heartbeats while we watch dire suspense play out. The movie's 2 hours and 13 minutes. Some of my family that went with me, they felt the time. I didn't notice it at all. When there's action, it's intense and violent, and when there are dramatic elements, they're captivating with touching and palpable emotion. And all of this is balanced really well, never favoring one aspect over another, but instead keeping the pacing even and efficient with mounting energy. So overall, The Creator is one of the best sci-fi movies I've seen in quite some time. The visuals are nothing short of astounding, with effects that best films with double or more of this one's budget. There's also a captivating story of humanity and love, showcasing the compassion that's possible when someone doesn't drown it out with fear and bias. While the story progression is predictable, the emotions displayed captured my heart and sucked me in for the entire ride. This is a must-see movie, and it celebrates what original storytelling can look like when given the opportunity. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and then a ton of violence. I give The Creator 4.5 out of 5 couches. So do you enjoy sci-fi movies? What's a favorite of yours? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.